All right. Excited to be here today with my new friend, Darryl Ballantyne. So, Darryl is the founder and CEO of LyricFind. They launched in 2004 and they're the world's largest licensed digital lyrics provider. They serve clients like Google, YouTube, Amazon, Pandora. He is also a pioneer in music licensing. He helped sign the first mass lyrics licensing deal with EMI in 2005. Maintains relationships with over 10,000 music publishers, including the Harry Fox Agency and many more. And he's also an industry authority and speaker. He speaks at events talking about licensing digital content. And so really grateful to have him on the podcast today to talk a little bit about LyricFind as a platform and what are some creative ways that artists like yourself can monetize your music without necessarily relying on some of the traditional methods of touring and streaming and whatnot. So, Darryl, thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm glad we could find a time to make this happen.
Absolutely. So, maybe to kick things off, for anyone that this is the first time meeting you or connecting with you, could you share just a little bit about the story behind starting LyricFind and what was really like the main problem that you've set out to solve with LyricFind?
So the answer to that is it depends. It depends when you look at which time we started LyricFind, because we first tried starting LyricFind in 2000 as a regular lyric website because one of my co-founders, Chris, was trying to figure out the name of a song based on just a little bit of the lyrics that he remembered. Couldn't figure out what it was. None of us knew what it was. And tried to search online based on the lyrics. Came back and said, none of these lyric sites out there let me search by lyrics. Let's start our own. So we said, sure. But then we quickly realized that that was a licensing nightmare. So it became really popular for the 9 months that we had that original version of the site up. And then we realized that we needed to get licensing. So we took everything down and tried to get licensing from music publishers to be able to display the lyrics. But that was next to impossible, basically, especially in 2000 when the music industry was trying to shut down the internet rather than work with it. So we moved on from that and shut it down. We were in university at the time. So we just finished school and then came back to it in 2004. And I was supposed to be going and working at EMI down in LA, working on digital music licensing deals, and that as after having graduated. And I was in the perfect metaphor for startup life. I was with my family at Canada's Wonderland, which is an amusement park just north of Toronto, and about to step on a roller coaster. And my phone rang, and it was someone at Microsoft, and they were launching the MSN Music Store. And they had found our old website, which didn't have any lyrics on it anymore, but did have my phone number on it. So they called and said, we're launching this music store, and we'd like to include lyric functionality on it. Can you license it? And I said, well, no, but let me make some calls. So called my co-founders, called Ted Cohen, who was my boss at EMI that I was going back to work with, and said, should we come back to this as an aggregator rather than a destination site ourselves? Has the industry changed enough? And one thing led to another, and Ted came on as part of our board of directors and helped us get the first licensing deals. And needless to say, I never went back to work at EMI and haven't had a real job ever since.
That's awesome. I love hearing kind of the origin stories of companies like that. So you mentioned that the purpose that you kind of set out to solve has kind of changed. Were you inferring like somewhat recently, like the core problem has changed as well? Or was it included there in that story?
Yeah, no, it was really just at the beginning that that things changed from us being consumer facing to B2B. So the crazy thing about at least the core part of our business, the lyric licensing, when we did those first licensing deals in 2004, 2005 with people like EMI and HFA, those deals outlined business models for lyrics that were per display, advertising revenue share, subscription revenue share, and per device for like hardware devices. Those are all in those initial deals 20 years ago. And those are the exact same models that we still use now to have all of that flexibility. So it's cool, but also ridiculous that none of that has changed in 20 years, that it's still based on the same models that we planned for 20 years ago. But what we've been
Must have done
doing,
a pretty good job planning them.
I guess, or a bad job innovating, one of the two. But what has changed is we started off with just static lyrics and just licensing for the US and Canada. And that's evolved into licensing everywhere in the world, having synchronization initially line by line and now word by word, well, synchronization, doing translations of lyrics, and really expanding on the lyric experience more rather than the licensing models. So that has all changed a lot. Plus, last year, we acquired a company called Rotor Videos that, among other video types, creates lyric videos for labels and independent artists. And they do things like Spotify Canvas videos, Apple Motion art videos, and all those things. So we keep finding new uses for lyrics, whether it's on the video side. We have a product called Lyric IQ that analyzes music through the lyrics, and we're licensing in places that 20 years ago I would have told you were insane. Even 10 years ago I would have told you it was insane for things like automotive. Like, who would have thought that lyrics in cars would be a thing, especially when you don't want to distract the driver. But now that you've got these massive entertainment systems for connected cars, you've got rear seat entertainment, you've got charge time entertainment, you've got people planning for entertainment while you're sitting and waiting for your kids to finish their swimming lesson. The possibilities just continue to open up in new markets that we didn't see coming back then, that's for sure.
Man, that's super interesting. My mind goes to, and I know this is sort of a tricky subject right now as it relates to music and licensing, but AI as it relates to like generative music and with lyrics in particular, I feel like the lyrics have been some of the most challenging parts that I found when using these AI tools. Like, it just doesn't do a great job. Like, it's usually like way too campy or too like cliche, and it just doesn't quite get it. At least that's been my experience. I don't know if things change so fast these days, but that's the first thing. I mean, having this massive. Yeah.
I think a lot of the AI generated lyrics that I've seen, they're great if you want to have a parody song or something like that, where you're not taking it too seriously. For writing a real, true, great song, I don't think they come close to like the great songwriters that we have now. It's a very different skill set than something a computer can just do.
I know. I would love to be able to use a platform where I could go like ChatGPT, but actually write like good lyrics for a song. That would be incredible.
I'd love to be able to write good anything when it comes to music. I'm unfortunately not a musically talented person myself, but obviously a huge fan of music. So I have a massive amount of admiration for the skill set that all these great musicians have that I just do not.
It's going to be crazy to see how things evolve in the next 5, 10, 20 years. But it really does kind of feel like now is the time where curation and like people who are fans of music, who have a good ear or good taste. I mean, it's kind of always been the case with producers, how in some cases they don't play instruments themselves, but they just have a good ear and they can kind of, direct what they want to hear. And I wonder if, I don't know, 10, 20 years from now, more of the creation process, it's going to be more focused on like the mind and what are the ideas people are coming up with. And we can use tools like AI to help generate some of these ideas. But anyways, I'm going to call myself back.
It's really interesting to see how things will evolve, and even like the tools that are out there to allow people to create content. Like the most recent example that I saw was my son, who is 9 years old, is writing a video game, and he started adding music to it, and he's using AI tools to create the music, and he plays something and I hear it in the background while he's off working on it. And it actually sounds good. And he doesn't know anything about music or notation. He's learning to play the recorder at school. But he's making good, I'll say video game quality music using these tools that are out there. And it's really impressive that capability exists.
Oh, man, that's so cool that he's able to be creating a video game at 9 years old.
He's got lots of aspirations.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, just on the podcast, we released an episode a few weeks ago interviewing Noland Arbaugh, who's the first patient to get a Neuralink installed. so brain-computer interface that he's basically paralyzed below the neck down. And so on the podcast, he used his Neuralink with an AI generation tool to create a song telepathically. That was amazing. It was like such a cool experience to be a part of. And yeah, just like a glimpse into a future where our creativity is sort of unlocked, where it kind of starts with the idea, and then we can actually turn that idea into music. But Darryl, I know that you have a lot of experience as it relates to royalties and licensing and different revenue streams for artists. And so I'm curious, for anyone that's here right now, that's like an independent artist who is always looking for ways to generate a sustainable income with their music, and maybe they're looking for different methods beyond streaming and touring and whatnot. What are some other creative ways that they can use things like their lyrics to be able to monetize?
There's lots of different uses now for lyrics, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger revenue stream for artists and songwriters and publishers. So, obviously, as streaming grows and all the major streaming services have lyrics integrated into their services, then that usage continues to grow. And in general, the more usage, the more money there is in it for the songwriter. So every time those lyrics are displayed through LyricFind on any of those services, that creates a payment to the publisher or songwriter, whoever controls the rights to that. So making sure that your lyrics are available, making sure that they are synchronized. Most of the platforms now use synchronized lyrics, and some of them will only show the lyrics if they're synchronized because they want to maintain the experience, is super important. Just at a base level to capture some of that revenue. But on top of just the regular base displays, having lyrics in a database like ours makes the music more discoverable. People are searching by lyrics, and if they're like Chris was 20 years ago, trying to figure out the name of a song that they just heard, whether it was on the radio or walking through a store or anywhere else, and they liked it and they're trying to find it, the lyrics are the biggest way that people figure out what that is. So having the lyrics in there makes it searchable, makes it discoverable by all those people to then find you, find your music, and find other ways to support an artist as well. Then on top of that, with Lyric IQ, if your lyrics are in our database, then they get parsed by Lyric IQ to tag them with things like emotion and sentiment values, content filtration, subject matter analysis. So that gets used by sync licensing platforms and playlisting and other programming services to find songs with the right context, the right child-friendly level or child-unfriendly level if you want to create a different type of playlist. So that's really important, and it all helps in discoverability. But then you can go beyond just the displays and the discoverability. A great way to capitalize on your music and monetize it is through lyric videos. A lot of artists don't have official videos on YouTube. A lot of music, whether it's new or older catalog, just doesn't have an official presence there. And as a result, what ends up happening is, if you're lucky, a user makes a UGC version of the video, whether it's a lyric video or an artwork video or something like that, so that there is some presence on there. And then you're getting a little bit of money off of YouTube Content ID and those types of claims, but that doesn't monetize it anywhere near the same level as an official video. And if it gets a lot of traffic, that traffic is going to somebody else's channel, and you're not reaching your fans in the same way. You're not controlling that reach for fans. So with our lyric video platform and the capabilities in the Rotor Videos platform, it allows artists to make videos really, really quickly and easily for all of that content that look amazing. The lyrics are, of course, accurate. They'll either use lyrics from our database or they can be added by the artist to make sure that they're perfect, and have a really, really high quality video there that drives traffic to your own channel, monetizes at a higher rate directly to you that you control, and you get all the knock-on effects from that. So it's really important to make sure that you have an official presence, especially a major platform like YouTube, but all of the other video platforms as well, so that you control it, you can monetize it, and there's a much, much better ROI. And if somebody finds it, that the benefit goes to you. So those types of usages are really, really key to maximizing value just from your lyrics, to not only get that direct compensation from the royalties for it, but all of the secondary effects and the network effects of capturing that traffic.
Super helpful. Yeah, so it sounds like a couple of the ones that you just brought up are, one, just making sure that the lyrics are available, that when you're distributing your music, that you have actually the synchronized lyrics, and that automatically when you do that, the publishing gets paid out. And then the other one that you brought up was the lyric videos. So making sure that rather than the traffic going to a channel that's not yours, that you don't own, just having a lyric video. A lot of times people are looking for lyric videos so they can watch it, they can see it at the same time. And the platform that you've acquired now gives you the ability to easily and quickly create those lyric videos. Oh, that's awesome. I've literally just found myself really wanting a good platform through which I could create lyric videos quickly and easily. Like I've just like a week ago, I think I was using Descript to try to create one. It like kind of worked, but it was like really difficult. Could you tell me a little bit more about that lyric video capability and how someone can get started with that?
Yeah, so it's available at rotorvideos.com, or we have a secondary platform that we built on the LyricFind side that is more of an enterprise edition for labels who want to do high volume bulk creation. So we have a project right now, for example, where we're generating, I think, 16,000 videos for a client, but it's automatically going through and grabs the lyrics from our database, uses a template design, and creates them, and it can do them really, really quickly. But Rotor Videos as a platform allows you to have a little bit more design control, and there's a library of over 3 million clips that you can add in. You can use album art, you can use different effects and styles and things on the videos and design them. It'll also take your audio and automatically sync the lyrics when you provide them, and transcribe them in that. So it makes it a really, really easy process. So it's quick and easy. You can do it in a couple of minutes instead of the hours it can take to try to manually generate it, and with other platforms and using a regular video editor or things like that. So it takes the torture out of that creation process, and it becomes really easy to make an album's worth of lyric videos, for example, with just a few minutes work and not needing any real video editing experience or anything like that. Just pick the themes and things that match your music. And it's so quick and easy. And we're working on integrations with that into other distribution platforms as well, for example, to have it be more accessible to everyone. But yeah, it's just available on rotorvideos.com. You can also make Spotify Canvas videos, Apple Music album motion art, other like music videos and artwork videos, different aspect ratios. And it's really customizable, but also really super easy to use.
Fantastic. That's super cool. Yeah, I remember when I was starting with my band about 12 or 13 years ago now, one of the first things that we did was we created lyric videos from our songs. It was a kind of an in-between, like having lyric videos, and then before we even had the budget or the ability to record full music videos.
Yep.
And it was such a smart thing to do. And yeah, that's a great resource to be able to share so that people can start out with those. If you don't have a video yet for your music, you've got to at least have lyric video. And it's so much easier using a platform like Rotor to do that.
Exactly. It's an easy way to plant your flag in a video platform or in YouTube to have an official video for it. Because if there's an official video there, people aren't going to bother to create a UGC one that steals the traffic from you and monetizes at a lower level. You're going to capture all that. We do a lot of work for labels where we're creating the lyric videos in advance of the release, so that on the day of the release, the video goes out onto the artist's official channel and captures all of that traffic and preempts the UGC side of it, so that they're the first one in the algorithm, in the search results, rather than something else. And it makes a huge, huge difference in the monetization of that video and the rest of your channel.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. Now, I bet there's just tons of creative use cases for lyrics in general too. Like lyrics are such a vital part of the creativity, and they're sort of like the way that our brain conceptualizes some of the meaning behind what we're listening to. Even things like T-shirts and branding and hooks and stuff. I don't know if you guys have built any integrations with print on demand types of things, or if you have any thoughts or guidance as it relates to other creative ways to use the lyrics.
Yeah, we launched a product called Lyric Merch a while ago that was integrated with print on demand in the back, and people could pick any line from the songs that we had licenses for merch for, and put it on a number of different products, whether it was T-shirts, mouse pads, even shower curtains, and build a design. The challenge that we ran into with that was it's very difficult to create a new e-commerce destination, and it's very difficult to compete with unlicensed options that are out there from an economic perspective. And being able to work within licensing rights, particularly when we're working with the publishers and not necessarily the labels on that for like band names and name and likeness issues. So that became a challenge for us. So we shut down the front end of it, the consumer facing side, but we do still offer those rights from a licensing standpoint to partners who want to create their own merch and have their own platform and audience, and want to do it legally rather than just let the unlicensed content on Etsy or Redbubble or places like that really just one-off independent stores often. But if it's a larger scale or a company that wants to be legit, we can provide those licenses.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. So if I'm hearing you correctly, right now there's a lot of unlicensed people who are selling products, which technically is that illegal if they actually use like the lyric, but because they're kind of one-off shops in general, they're kind of sliding underneath the rug. But if they got to a certain point, then it actually would.
It's hard to enforce both from a scale perspective, because when we initially worked with publishers to get lyric websites licensed, if they reached certain traffic threshold, it was easy to go and license that platform and target the ones that are meaningful. It's not like the publishers ever wanted to go after fan sites that posted lyrics or things like that. That never happened and was never the intention. But with merch, it's a lot harder, not only because it can be a lot of independent sellers on places like Amazon or Etsy or Redbubble, where it's kind of whack-a-mole for copyright claims and there isn't a good, efficient way to license everyone, but also because merchandise licensing itself is a trickier business where often it requires writer approval, and there's a lot of design rules and things around what can go in that merchandise. Like, you're not going to take a Disney lyric and put it next to a picture of a gun on a t-shirt or something, for example, right? Like, that's just not allowed. So it's infinitely more complicated and a lot harder to police as a result. And the ROI on policing it for publishers just wasn't there for the most part.
Makes sense. So when you just shared that about Disney, it reminded me of X somewhat recently. They opened up their Grok X AI. Their whole thing was like, there's no rules. Like, basically when they first opened it. And I live about 10 minutes away from Disney World, and the first thing that I went to was, and I don't know what this speaks to my personal character. I'm just like dark, but I was like, Mickey Mouse with the gun.
Yeah.
I like typed it in. It was like Mickey Mouse, and like it was absurd. It was like, this just doesn't make sense, like from a visual standpoint. But yeah, trying to put that on a t-shirt and selling it. Oh my gosh. I can also imagine how it could be tricky to enforce from a standpoint of like, if you have a song called Love and like the chorus is like love, and you like throw that on a t-shirt, who's going to be like, hey, like, yeah, that's my song.
Exactly. Like, how do you define which song is attributed to a short lyric? We had instances where we had licenses for one version of a song, but not another, because of just the way it can work either territorially or with co-publishers, things like that. Or you've got two completely different songs, but they happen to share a 5-word line that is, commonly associated with one song, but was licensed through the other song it gets complicated that way.
It's tricky business. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe this can tie into the last question I was curious about hearing from you, which is obviously you have a lot of background in licensing and royalties and copyright law as it relates to lyrics. And right now, and I know there's a lot of things that are changing fast, but with AI, there's a lot of question marks around copyright and what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, what training data should be allowed to be used, and if it's creating an original piece of artwork using the trade data, like should that be like compensated? And as it relates to influences, like all of us, like all of our music was in some way influenced by our favorite artists, and it kind of goes back to original source. And like, how do we like, are we going to pay back to like? So yeah, I'm curious when you look forward 5, 10, 20 years as it relates to lyrics in particular, and just the art of songwriting. What are you imagining the trend being, and how can artists that are watching this right now really make the most out of their lyric writing, their songwriting, and also using the tools that are available to be able to express themselves?
I think, looking forward 5, 10, 20 years, there's going to be a lot of lawyers that make a lot of money with AI and that, and a lot of other question marks, as you say. It's extremely complicated. But I do think that there's a lot of great, really productive uses for AI, and it's a great tool that can be used by songwriters and by people who are aspiring songwriters, and maybe like me, don't really have much of that skill, but being able to use those tools to help with suggestions, to help get, whether it's different terminology or different ideas from it, to help can clear a writer's block, for example, of I'm trying to find a way to say this thing or this, and hey, AI, can you suggest a couple of ways to say this, or things that rhyme with this if you're trying to make it rhyme, and give it those parameters. As we were saying earlier, I don't think that it really becomes a true substitute for a serious songwriter and someone writing great songs to do the whole thing. But absolutely, I see it being used as a tool. I see it being used as something that can help make the process easier, make the process faster. The challenge, of course, becomes what you were saying before, is how do we license that and how do we attribute that properly? And we grew up in an era where bands would happily say who they were influenced by. And, they were inspired by this artist or that artist. Now there's almost a fear of, if you say that you're inspired by this, somebody's going to sue you for copyright infringement. And the pendulum has swung the other way, where being influenced by somebody means you're infringing on their work. And there's so much music being released that it's next to impossible. There's no original note sequences left, right? We've used them all. So by definition, you're infringing on somebody by writing any song under that. So I think there needs to be, over the next decade or two, some changes to copyright law to lift the cloud of fear that things like, whether it's blurred lines or all the Ed Sheeran cases, I mean, he's won those, but those aren't things that an artist has to be afraid of when they're truly writing an original work, and be able to create freely and admit that you're influenced by somebody or inspired by somebody, because that's how music has always evolved. And not everything has to be about infringement or getting a copyright judgment against somebody and a piece of it. You can just be part of the industry and part of the ecosystem of creativity. But finding where that line is difficult. I think it has to move from where it is now, but where that line is, I still have no idea. But I'd like to see more freedom of creativity, and that probably involves use of AI tools. But if you're training generative AI tools off of existing content, there should be some level of compensation there. How that gets tracked, how that gets allocated is also extremely difficult. And I don't think there's an easy answer there, hence it being the Lawyers Full Employment Act. But we'll figure it out. The music industry, for all its faults, eventually figures out how to work with technology. And it is in its nature kind of the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the entertainment industry, because whether it's a smaller file size or a smaller snippet or like amount of time that's taken, it becomes easier for technological innovations to hit music first than before the rest of the entertainment industry. So we're always the ones that have to figure it out first and have to go through those growing pains with press play and Napster in the early days and things like that, and even like original Napster and things like Grokster and other things way back when, those were all precursors to Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the other services and Disney Plus and things like that were out there. They didn't have to figure it out with piracy the same way that music did. And the same is true, I think, for AI and other technological innovations, that music gets stuck having to figure it out first, and then the rest of the industry learns from our process.
That's super interesting. Yeah, and it definitely makes sense in terms of when we're talking about like original source and copyright material and being influenced by other people. That's always been sort of a tricky line to draw between, like, we don't exist in a vacuum. Like, we had to, be inspired by someone or something else. And what came to mind was almost like a analogy between parents and children. How, the child, they have the DNA like of their parents, and they're going to go out and do their own thing, and they're their own person. But you can't be like, hey, like, you're actually your dad, because you have that DNA in you. In a similar way, like, we kind of have our parents of like who inspired us to make music, and we have our influences, but it creates a new child that is its own thing. But you can't kind of separate the DNA from it too. Like, it came out of something.
Yep, exactly. It's nature versus nurture in a lot of it, but we're never without influence.
Good stuff. Well, it's certainly got more metaphysical than I thought it was going to be, but I really enjoyed it. So, Darryl, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to share your story and some of the lessons that you've learned for artists to help them to get discovered and to be able to make sustainable income with their music. And for those artists who are watching this right now who are interested in checking out LyricFind or making sure that they've got their bases covered as it relates to getting discovered with their lyrics, what's the best place for them to go to dive deeper into the resources?
So if they go to lyricfind.com, they can sign up to be a verified artist on our platform. And that gives them the ability to manage all of their own lyrics. They can make sure that they're in there if we don't have them already, edit them, synchronize them if it's not already done. So that's the easiest way to do it, is sign up there. Make sure that your publisher has a licensing deal with us. If you are signed to a publisher, and if you're not, then you can grant us the rights yourself. But virtually every publisher we have a deal with at this point, so odds are you're covered. But just at lyricfind.com, and you can learn a lot more about the video products on there too, or just go straight to rotorvideos.com.
All right, fantastic. Well, like always, we'll put all links in the show notes for easy access. And Darryl, thanks again for being on the episode today.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah!